The Memory Thief. Chapter 1, The Neon Labyrinth. Rain hammered against the grimy window panes, each drop a tiny explosion of neon light as it streaked down the glass. Inside the cramped apartment, Ethan Blackwell. Ghost to those in the know, traced the cracks in the ceiling with weary eyes. Each crack told a story, a fragment of a life lived, a memory fading, a life he could steal. He reached for the chipped mug of synth coffee, the bitter taste of familiar comfort, as he glanced at the flickering holoscreen. Lines of code danced across the display, a cryptic message from a new client. The message was brief, shrouded in layers of encryption, but the promised payout was enough to make even a seasoned diver like Ghost take notice. A high-risk, high-reward job, the kind that could make or break a career. Ghost ran a hand through his short, dark hair, a nervous tic he'd never quite managed to shake. He was good at what he did, a ghost in the machine, slipping through security systems and extracting memories with the precision of a surgeon. But this job felt different, a gnawing unease settling in his gut. He stood, the worn leather of his jacket creaking as he shrugged it on. His gaze fell upon the mirror, reflecting a face etched with the lines of countless heists and sleepless nights. A cybernetic eye, a glint of chrome in the dim light, replaced the one he'd lost in a botched extraction years ago. One last job, he muttered to his reflection, a promise he'd made to himself more times than he could count. But the allure of the unknown, the thrill of the dive, always pulled him back in. He stepped out into the rain-slicked streets of Neo-Tokyo, a city that never slept. The neon signs pulsed with an eerie glow, casting long shadows that danced with the steam rising from the rain-soaked pavement. The air hummed with the electronic chatter of the city's vast network, a symphony of data and desires. Ghost pulled up the collar of his jacket, his cybernetic eye scanning the crowds for any sign of trouble. He moved with the practiced ease of a predator, blending into the shadows, his senses heightened. The city was a maze, a labyrinth of neon and steel, but he knew its secrets, its hidden pathways. He made his way to the designated meeting point, a nondescript noodle bar tucked away in a back alley. The air inside was thick with the aroma of spices and simmering broth. Ghost slid onto a stool at the bar, his eyes scanning the dimly lit interior. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. They slid a data chip across the bar top, their voice barely a whisper. "The memory you seek is locked away tight, but with your skills, Ghost, I'm sure you'll find a way." Ghost picked up the chip, his fingers tracing the intricate etchings on its surface. The promise of untold riches and a chance to strike a blow against the regime that controlled the city's memory trade. He raised his eyes to meet the stranger's gaze. "Consider it done." Chapter 2. The Memory Heist. The towering edifice of the memory bank loomed in the distance, its sleek chrome facade reflecting the neon glow of the city. A fortress of data, a treasure trove of human experience, guarded by layers of security that would make even the most hardened hacker sweat. Ghost slipped through a side alley, his footsteps silent on the damp pavement. A quick glance at his wrist implant confirmed the schematics of the building, a complex web of laser grids, pressure sensors, and bioscanners. A challenge, but one he relished. He pressed a small device against the back entrance, a faint hum emanating from it as it bypassed the security lock. The door hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Ghost slipped inside, the door closing silently behind him. The air inside was sterile, chilled to a precise temperature, the only sound the rhythmic hum of the ventilation system. Ghost moved through the shadows, his cybernetic eye picking out the faint outlines of security cameras. He ducked into a maintenance shaft, crawling through the cramped space, the metal grating scraping against his jacket. He emerged into a vast server room, the air thrumming with the energy of countless processors. Rows upon rows of memory pods lined the walls, each one containing a lifetime of experiences, emotions, and secrets. Ghost pulled out a specialized tool, a neural interface that would allow him to access the memory he sought. He plugged it into a port on his temple, a sharp jolt of pain shooting through his head as the device interfaced with his neural network. A holographic projection flickered to life in front of him, a map of the memory bank's vast database. He navigated through the maze of data, searching for the specific memory coordinates he'd been given. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A figure, clad in a sleek black bodysuit, materialized out of the shadows. A woman, her face masked by a high-tech visor, her movements fluid and precise. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," she said, her voice a melodic whisper amplified by her visor. Ghost froze, his hand hovering over the memory pod. "Who are you?" "Call me Echo," she said, stepping closer. "And you're trespassing." Ghost tensed, his instincts screaming at him to run. But something in her voice, a hint of curiosity, held him in place. "I'm just here for a memory," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This memory doesn't belong to you," Echo replied, her hand reaching for a weapon holstered at her hip. "Maybe not," Ghost said, his eyes narrowing, "but it's mine for the taking." He lunged for the memory pod, his fingers brushing against the cool metal. A siren blared, red lights flashing as the security system went into lockdown. "Time to go," Echo said, a smirk playing on her lips. They sprinted through the maze of corridors, dodging laser beams and leaping over obstacles. Ghost could hear the heavy footsteps of security guards closing in behind them. They reached a dead end, a solid wall of steel blocking their path. Ghost glanced at Echo, a question in his eyes. Echo pressed her hand against the wall, a series of complex symbols appearing on her visor. The wall shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a hidden passage. They slipped through the opening, the wall sealing behind them. The sound of the guards' footsteps faded as they disappeared into the darkness. Ghost turned to Echo, a mix of gratitude and suspicion in his eyes. "Thanks," he said. Echo shrugged. "Don't mention it, just don't get caught next time." She vanished into the shadows, leaving Ghost alone with the stolen memory and a growing sense of unease. Chapter 3. The Unraveling Threads. The safe house was a forgotten corner of the city, a crumbling warehouse tucked away beneath a tangle of elevated highways. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of rust and damp concrete. The only light came from a flickering hollow projector, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Ghost sat hunched over a makeshift workbench, his fingers dancing across a series of intricate tools. Beside him, Echo leaned against a stack of crates, her arms crossed, her visor casting an eerie glow on her face. "This is it," Ghost muttered, his voice a low growl. "The memory." The projector flickered, and a hazy image materialized in the air. It was a jumbled collage of scenes, a politician delivering a rousing speech, a crowd cheering, a city skyline bathed in fireworks. But there was something off, a subtle distortion in the colors, a glitch in the audio. Ghost reached out, his fingers tracing the edges of the image. A jolt of static electricity coursed through him, the hair on his arms standing on end. He closed his eyes, his mind reaching out to the memory, trying to unravel its secrets. "What do you see?" Echo asked, her voice laced with concern. Ghost opened his eyes, his pupils dilated. "Control," he whispered. "Manipulation. The syndicate is rewriting history." The image on the projector shifted, revealing a hidden layer beneath the surface. A shadowy figure, their face obscured, pulling strings behind the scenes, altering the memories of the masses. "They're playing with people's lives," Ghost growled, his anger rising. "They're erasing the truth." Echo stepped closer, her hand resting on his shoulder. "We have to expose them," she said, her voice firm. Ghost nodded, a grim determination in his eyes. "But we need proof, something concrete." He reached out to the memory once more, his mind probing deeper. He felt a sudden surge of power, a strange sensation of control. The memory began to unravel, the hidden layer peeling away like a rotten onion skin. He saw the shadowy figure again, but this time their face was clear. It was a woman, her features cold and calculating, her eyes burning with ambition. "Madame," Ghost whispered, the name sending a chill down his spine. The memory shifted again, revealing a hidden message, a code embedded within the data. Ghost's cybernetic eyes scanned the code, translating it into a series of coordinates. "A location," he said, a glimmer of hope in his voice. "This could be the key to bringing them down." But as he reached for the coordinates, the memory began to distort, the images blurring and twisting. Ghost felt a searing pain in his head, as if his mind was being ripped apart. He pulled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "What was that?" he asked, his voice trembling. Echo looked at him, her eyes wide with alarm. "I don't know," she said, "but I think you just did something incredible." Ghost stared at his hands, a sense of awe and dread washing over him. He had not just accessed the memory, he had changed it. He had woven his own will into the fabric of the past. "I can control memories," he whispered, his voice filled with both wonder and fear. "I can rewrite history." Echo's hand tightened on his shoulder. "This is a dangerous power, Ghost," she said, "but it could be our only hope." Chapter 4. The Weaver's Gambit. The Syndicate's headquarters was a monolithic tower piercing the smog-choked sky, a symbol of their iron grip on Neo-Tokyo. A place where memories were bought, sold, and rewritten. A fortress of secrets and lies. Ghost and Echo stood in the shadows of a nearby building, their eyes fixed on the tower. A steady stream of hovercars zipped in and out of the complex, carrying the city's elite to their clandestine meetings. "This is it," Ghost whispered, his voice barely audible over the din of the city. "The belly of the beast." Echo nodded, her visor reflecting the cold light of the moon. "Ready?" she asked, her voice a steady hum through her comlink. Ghost reached out, his hand brushing against Echo's. A silent exchange, a moment of connection amidst the chaos. "Ready," he replied, his voice filled with determination. They slipped into the shadows, their movements fluid and synchronized. Ghost led the way, his cybernetic eye scanning the building for weaknesses in the security grid. Echo followed close behind, her lithe form blending seamlessly with the darkness. They breached the perimeter fence with ease, Ghost's tech skills bypassing the alarms and disabling the security cameras. They scaled the tower's exterior, their bodies clinging to the smooth metal like spiders. Ghost paused at a window, his eyes scanning the interior. A meeting room filled with suited figures huddled around a holographic table. "This is our chance," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. He reached out, his mind extending into the room, weaving a thread of doubt into the minds of the Syndicate's leaders. He planted subtle suggestions, whispers of suspicion, seeds of discord. Echo watched in awe as the faces around the table contorted with confusion and distrust. Arguments erupted, alliances fractured. The meeting descended into chaos. "Beautiful," she murmured, a hint of admiration in her voice. They moved through the tower, Ghost weaving his web of deception, Echo using her knowledge of the Syndicate's inner workings to guide them. They encountered guards, but Ghost's memory manipulation rendered them docile, their minds filled with fabricated orders to ignore the intruders. They reached the top floor, Madame's private quarters. The door was sealed, guarded by a state-of-the-art security system. Ghost placed his hand on the scanner, a surge of energy flowing through him. The system recognized him as one of the Syndicate's elite, granting them access. The door slid open, revealing a lavishly decorated room filled with priceless artifacts and stolen memories. At the center of the room sat Madame, a woman of striking beauty and chilling composure. "Welcome, Mr. Blackwell," she said, her voice like honeyed poison. "I've been expecting you." Ghost met her gaze, his mind racing. He could feel her power, the strength of her will, but he also sensed a vulnerability, a darkness lurking beneath the surface. "I know your secrets, Madame," he said, his voice steady, "and I'm here to expose them." Chapter 5. The Shattered Mirror. Madame's office was a symphony of shadows and half-light, the only illumination coming from the flickering holographic displays that lined the walls. Each screen pulsed with stolen memories, a kaleidoscope of lives lived and lost. Ghost and Echo stood before Madame's imposing desk, the air crackling with unspoken tension. Madame steepled her fingers, her gaze flickering between them, a predatory smile playing on her lips. "So the Ghost and his Echo?" she purred. "Come to haunt me, have you?" Ghost met her gaze unflinchingly, his cybernetic eye glowing with an eerie light. "We know your secrets, madam," he said, his voice a low growl. "We know what you've done." Madam laughed, the sound like shards of ice. "Secrets? Done? My dear boy, you have no idea what you're dealing with." She rose from her chair, her movements fluid and graceful. The room seemed to warp around her, the shadows twisting and contorting, the holographic displays flickering with a maddening intensity. "This is my world," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I control the past, the present, and the future. You are nothing but pawns in my game." Ghost felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, his vision blurring. He stumbled back, clutching his head. He could feel Madame's power, her mind probing his defenses, trying to break through his will. But then he heard Echo's voice, a calm whisper in his ear. Don't let her in, Ghost. Fight back. He took a deep breath, focusing his mind, drawing upon the raw power of his memory-weaving ability. He reached out to Madame, his mind a razor-sharp blade cutting through the layers of deception and illusion. He saw flashes of her past, fragments of memories she had tried to bury. A young girl, her eyes filled with pain and betrayal, watching as her family was torn apart by the regime. A woman hardened by grief and consumed by a thirst for revenge, manipulating memories to twist the world to her will. You're not a monster, Madame, Ghost said, his voice filled with pity. You're a victim. Madame's composure shattered, her face contorting with rage. You dare pity me? She screamed, her voice a banshee wail. The room erupted in a maelstrom of energy, memories clashing and colliding, reality itself warping and twisting. Ghost and Echo fought back, their minds a symphony of defiance, their wills intertwined. With a final surge of power, Ghost reached deep into Madame's mind, exposing her deepest fears and insecurities. The holographic displays flickered wildly, revealing the syndicate's crimes to the world. The illusion of control shattered, the truth laid bare for all to see. The people of Neo-Tokyo, their memories no longer clouded by the syndicate's lies, rose up in a wave of rebellion. Madame, her power broken, collapsed to her knees, her face a mask of despair. The room returned to normal, the shadows receding, the holographic displays fading to black. Ghost and Echo stood amidst the wreckage of Madame's empire, their hearts filled with both triumph and sorrow. They had won the battle, but the war for truth and memory was far from over. Chapter 6, Echoes of the Past. The city was different now. The neon still pulsed, the rain still fell, but there was a lightness to the air, a sense of hope that had been absent for so long. The syndicate's grip on Neo-Tokyo had been broken, their lies exposed, their reign of terror over. Ghost stood on a rooftop overlooking the city, the wind whipping at his jacket. He watched as people gathered in the streets below, their faces alight with joy and newfound freedom. A memory played in his mind, a vision of the future he and Echo had fought for. Echo joined him, her visor reflecting the warm glow of the rising sun. It's beautiful, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cheers of the crowd. Ghost nodded, a bittersweet smile playing on his lips. We did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We won. But Echo's brow furrowed, a shadow passing over her face. At what cost? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ghost turned to her, his eyes searching hers. What do you mean? Echo looked away, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Our power, she said, the ability to manipulate memories. It's a dangerous weapon, Ghost, one we could easily abuse. Ghost fell silent, contemplating her words. He had seen firsthand the destructive potential of memory manipulation, the way it could twist the truth and shatter lives. We can't let fear control us, he said, his voice firm. We have to use our power for good, to heal the wounds inflicted by the syndicate. Echo nodded, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. You're right, she said. We can use our abilities to help people reclaim their stolen memories, to rebuild their lives. They spent the following months working tirelessly, traveling the city, using their powers to restore the fragmented memories of those who had been victimized by the syndicate. They saw joy, pain, anger, and sorrow, a kaleidoscope of human emotion that strengthened their resolve. One evening, as they sat by a campfire overlooking the city, Ghost turned to Echo, a question in his eyes. What about you? He asked. What are your memories? Echo hesitated, her gaze flickering in the firelight. I don't remember, she said softly. My past is a blank slate, a void. Ghost reached out, his hand gently touching her arm. We'll find them, he said, together. Echo smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. She had found a friend, a partner, someone who understood her and accepted her for who she was. As the sun rose, casting its golden rays across the city, Ghost and Echo looked out at the horizon, their hearts filled with hope. They had faced darkness and emerged stronger, their bond forged in the fires of adversity. They were the memory thief and the Echo, guardians of the past, present, and future. And their journey had only just begun.